Welcome back to America's Commercial Real Estate Show. I'm Michael Ball. Today we are talking logistics, we're talking distribution, we're talking industrial real estate. And this segment is brought to you by GetYourPlumLoan.com. It's an interesting site. You can really get lenders to compete for your business online very quickly. Check it out at GetYourPlumLoan.com. Well, please welcome my guest today. We have Larry Callahan. He's with Pattillo Industrial Real Estate. He's here in Studio One. Larry,
thank you for having me.
Well, Larry, industrial real estate's really been a hot market. You know, we've all seen it with e-commerce and everything going on around the country and the growth there. It's really been hot, and the economy's been improving. So I guess that means we're getting new supply, new construction. What are you seeing for new supply out around the country today?
Well, we're seeing a lot of it. It is a hot segment, and nationally, the reports that I'm seeing are that over 100 million square feet of new industrial real estate has been brought online already this year through the first half of 2017. And most people don't know what 100 million square feet looks like, but for perspective, that's about 2,222 football fields under roof. Yeah. Not that they're playing football in there, but to give you an idea of perspective, you know, y'all know what a football field looks like. That's a lot of new space that's going online. If they stay in that same pace, then you've got, you know, more than 4,000 football fields under roof coming online just this year, new supply.
And how big are these buildings typically that are being built today?
Well, you know, it depends obviously on, you know, which market you're talking about, but the hottest part of the industrial market now for years has been the biggest buildings. These regional distribution centers, fulfillment centers as they call them in the e-commerce world. And those buildings are tending to be 1 million to 1.2 million. So you're talking, you know, 22 football fields under roof in one building. So it's a big building, and so it's the hottest part of the market. So if you look at like the averages that are happening in the big markets, which are, you know, Chicago, Lehigh Valley, Dallas, Atlanta, Inland Empire, New Jersey, those big markets. These big buildings are 1 million square foot buildings, and your average is, you know, average buildings getting built are somewhere in the 400,000 square foot range. They're tending to be larger buildings, not smaller ones. Yeah. So that's probably the biggest trend, is great big regional distribution centers being put in all over the country.
And how high are the ceilings? What's the clear span ceiling height and typically in these new buildings like that?
Well, it's been pushing up now for years. The standard is probably 34 feet for most of them at this point, but there's a number of them that are pushing up over 40. And I don't know that there's that many e-commerce companies that are actually using that full amount of space, the full cube as they call it, but they are doing that, just planning for the future that they might actually go up that high.
Yeah, and how does this new supply level trend when you look back at kind of historic levels?
Well, we're at record amounts of activity, and it's, you know, we came out of a long recession where there wasn't much going on, and then the first thing that really started happening was Amazon building, you know, distribution centers around the country, and some people have described this as a Goldilocks economy because it's not too hot, not too cold. It was slow to recover. There was a lot of space that had to fill back up. But this slow and steady recovery that we've been going through has been very good for industrial. We haven't had a rush of oversupply, even though we've got a lot going on. Nationally, the demand for industrial has exceeded the supply for 28 straight quarters now.
Nice. Nice. So how long do you think these good times are going to last for industrial real estate?
Well, I guess, you know, I'll talk about my own company for a second. Right now, we're starting a round of speculative buildings in various cities throughout the Southeast. And it's because we believe we can build those. We think the demand is there. We will fill them and stabilize them before there's any downturn. Right. So we're betting it's actually years to come. And, you know, there's risk always in everything. All through the world, there's always a shock that could happen that changes the picture. But this steady growth in the economy, it's been struggling to get to a 2% rate of growth, but it's been continuing to grow. And this is all happening, without a change in the health care in the country, or tax reform, or infrastructure that's all been talked about. None of that has actually happened, but the economy is just steadily continuing to grow. And we're looking at most recent reports, mid-year 2017. The earnings of the S&P 500 were up 10%, and that's pretty nice. And then the revenue was up 5%. Those are pretty healthy growth rates. And so companies are doing things. The economy is working. It's transforming while it happens. And one of those transformations is very important to industrial real estate. And that transformation is that things that used to happen at malls or in retail buildings are now more and more happening in industrial buildings. And that is a rapid growth. The increase in revenue in e-commerce is running around 10% a year.
Wow. And
just that alone is generating about 50 to 60 million square feet of demand for new industrial product, in the market. So that is, if we stay on the same pace we were talking about earlier, we might deliver 200 million square feet of new industrial space during the course of this year. And 50 to 60 million square feet of it at least is going to be oriented toward the e-commerce fulfillment centers.
Okay, and you talk about there's always some risk. You talk about new supply, and you guys are doing spec. Of that unprecedented amount of new supply that's coming online this year, how much of that is spec?
Well, there's a lot of numbers. A lot of people put out numbers all over, but you kind of look at where the average number is coming out, and most of it is like 3/4 of it is speculative. And it's noteworthy to think about that, because if you go back a few years ago, there was a note of caution that was still in the air. Maybe it came from the sources of capital, maybe it was just developers having been burned during a downturn, but a lot of it was build to suit for 4 or 5 years, from 2010 to 13, 14. But it has shifted now to speculative. And part of that too is that we talk about record amounts of new construction are coming online. We're also at record vacancy rates. Various reports, again, people have different rates depending on what they include in it as far as the vacancy rate. But one report I saw recently said that the current national vacancy rate is about 3% below what the long-term trend is. So we're in a tight market. So developers that are out, call it speculative construction, but what they're actually doing is meeting a demand that's out there. There's a steady flow of demand for this product, especially the newer product with taller, clear heights. And then one other thing that has become really important in the new buildings that are coming in, and that is parking. And it's one of the reasons why so much of this, especially the e-commerce, is tending to go to build-to-suit projects or new speculative construction that was designed by people that really know what they're doing.
They need more parking,
they can't,
more people.
Exactly. They're putting lots of people. These fulfillment centers are not a place where they store goods. These are a place where they bring things in and get them back out real quickly, and they need a lot of people in there. For instance, just recently, Amazon announced a national job fair where they were hiring people on the spot, and they were doing it in 5 or 6, maybe 7 locations around the country, but they were going to hire 50,000 people.
Wow.
I mean, people wonder, like, what do I do? Where should I go? What should I do next?
I thought they were just an online company.
They're an online company that now has a very large real estate footprint, and a lot of people are working for them. They're not up to the level of Walmart, who has a lot of people. I think they're one of the larger employers in the country, but they are rapidly adding people.
Yeah. So what else is new in these newer buildings, Larry? Is there anything new with sustainability or technology that you're seeing today?
Well, I think we're at a transition point. Obviously, people that are in the know on industrial have been watching the trend toward taller and taller buildings for a long time. But the one thing that these buildings, when you start thinking of something that's 22 football fields under one roof in a 1 million square foot building, or 1.2 million, those size buildings have a lot of lights in them. And if you're the one paying the electricity bill, you care a lot about that. So one of the trends that we're seeing pretty strong push for now, and we think we've hit that transition point, is people looking for LED lighting. And most people that are listening here have, at least thought about as you go through the store, buying an LED light, and when you pick them up, you think, wow, that's really an expensive bulb. But go back again, if you hadn't gone back in the last couple of years, the prices are starting to come down. And I think we're at that transition point where you're looking at a commercial thing where you're going to see more and more people looking for that because it just saves them so much money.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that's interesting. We're using LED lights in some of our spaces in our office, and it's much nicer light. And like you said, it reduces your utility costs over time. So, so as an example, how much more in a 1 million square foot industrial building would you increase your cost by doing all LED today?
Well, I'll tell you how most of them is going. If it's a build to suit, they're asking the landlord to put that cost in. And so we're incurring it. You end up getting it back through the rent. And I think we're at a transition. There was a point in time where if somebody wanted an LED, that was an outlier, and you wouldn't be sure that the next person might want that. But today's, you're seeing more and more landlords that are willing to put that in as part of the whole LED package as part of what they're doing.
And is that adding, what, a couple $100,000 of cost, or
again,
what,
depending on the size of the building. But the cost has come down so much recently, I hesitate to quote a dollar per square foot number, but it's because it's rapidly moving down. But it's in a building of this size, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars for that. But the savings accrues to the tenant, and they're willing to go in that building and be effective at what they're doing, and they're going to be more effective as their operating costs are less.
Yeah. And are you seeing, Larry, any increase in demand in your industrial properties around the southeast U.S. where you are, and I guess now you're doing some properties in other places around the country from non-e-commerce tenants? Is the kind of the market, the pro-business environment we're in and seeing, is that helping your other tenants?
Well, there's a general optimism that is present in the business community. There's a lot of trends all the time, but consumer confidence is one thing people talk about. Businesses are quietly making bets and doing things. They're expanding. They're consolidating operations or adjusting. And one theme that I think is true is the trend toward e-commerce, the selling of things, the establishment of a presence online. That is something that is pervasive. So there are certain companies that are, the Amazons of the world that are a internet-based company. They started, that was what their whole thing was. But everybody else that's selling things has got some sort of presence on the web also. And so really e-commerce is threading through everything we do. And every company out there has come up with a approach. I mean, take Home Depot as an example. Home Depot used to place, it was actually a fun thing for guys to do on the weekend. Even if we needed just an LED light bulb, we'd get in our pickup truck and ride over to the Home Depot, and we would, buy a light and put it in the back and drive it home. That was an adventure. People are doing that less and less. Not that it isn't still a fun thing to do, but more and more people are going online and ordering that. Home Depot has not been adding a lot of new retail locations, but they have been building big fulfillment centers that are tapping into the e-commerce.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a great market, and industrial owners and investors are loving it. Larry, thanks for joining us today.
Well, glad to be here. Thank you.
And thanks for joining us wherever you're listening or watching the show. Thanks for being with us, and join us next week. We'll have another great show for you. Until next week, be sure that you always lead, learn, and laugh, and join us for America's Commercial Real Estate Show.